Welcome everybody, thank you all for coming. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people, and I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and welcome any Indigenous people who are present with us here today. Wow, what a good crowd. I thought this room was going to be hard to fill, but it filled it up, yeah. I just wanted to say a thank you to the Human Rights Commission for giving us the opportunity to use this wonderful room. And it's great that we've got all 4 commissioners here today. So we've got Helen and Jodie and Karen, and John somewhere around who's just about to join us, yeah. I'd also like to welcome Jo Woods, who's the Coordinator General in the ACT for Family and Domestic Violence. It's timely that we're actually launching this campaign today, as in this week, because on Wednesday, the 17th, it was the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia. And that's a day that draws attention to the situation faced by lesbian, gay, bisexuals, transgender and intersex people, and anyone who really doesn't conform to the majority sexual and gender norms. So it highlights the need for the recognition of human rights. So what a good place to have the launch today in the Human Rights Commission. This year's theme is also Love Makes a Family. It's really aimed at celebrating families in all their forms. So again, what a complementary week to support this campaign. While we know that family and domestic violence is a really difficult topic, we know that it affects a significant proportion of the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender and intersex community, which I'm going to be referring to as LGBTIQ from now on. The local research we did showed that many respondents, though, didn't recognise domestic and family violence in their own relationships. So as you can see, the campaign really aims to show loving, diverse couples in the ACT as a reminder that domestic and violence can happen in the relationships that they have and that there are local services which can help. So it's good to see so many of the models in the room. We've got Veronica and Krishna and Joel and Alan. I don't think we've got anyone else. We've got a couple of the other couples apologise. They're one lot in Bali, I think, and one lot in Amsterdam. I don't know why they chose the Amsterdam. Yeah.
So what could we launch in Bali?
Sorry, next time. We'll have to get it back. Also I'd like to recognise Jill, our project worker who worked with us on this project and worked with a lot of you in the room to work on this and get it to where it did. We've also got many of our comrades in organisations that worked with us to support this. So we've got Agenda, Domestic Violence Crisis Service, the AIDS Action Council, Legal Aid. Peter is not here, Peter Hindle. He was going to be here, so hopefully he'll turn up. And also we worked very closely with the Ministerial Advisory Council on LGBTIQ, which was really useful in gathering support around this and trying to engage people in the community. Also thank you Ben and Lester from Paper Monkey, who worked with us in developing this concept and really took what people told them was the right approach to this campaign, and that's, you know, really about making sure it's not a negative campaign that would stigmatise, but that would encourage people to really think about it, and which showed people that they knew in the community and would recognise and understand the word, and weren't just models. Yeah. Although they should be now. Yeah. I'm pleased that Jodie Griffiths-Cook agreed to launch the campaign for us this morning on behalf of the Human Rights Commission, especially given her role as public advocate, because it actually relates to promoting and protecting the rights and interests of anyone in the ACT community who is experiencing vulnerability. And domestic violence and family violence is recognised as a major social issue now, and it is a especially damaging and isolating experience for people that come from marginalised groups. So her role includes advocating for those in the community, and so her role also is about giving voice to the issues that affect people experiencing vulnerability. So no better person to launch it on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. I invite Jodie to do so.
I too would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Ngunnawal people, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging for the important role that they undertake and the ongoing contribution that they make to the community here in Canberra and elsewhere. And also would like to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are in the room today. I'm pleased to have been asked to launch this awareness campaign on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. We know that within the general community, domestic and family violence is most commonly experienced by women and children in the home and perpetrated by a man who is known to the woman who is the previous partner. But evidence also suggests that a significant proportion of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex and queer community, and I'm going to similarly go with LGBTIQ from this point forward, will also experience domestic or family violence of some kind in the course of their lives. Researchers have also identified that the types of abuse in LGBTIQ communities often mirror violence in relationships in non-LGBTIQ communities. These involve emotional, financial, psychological, physical, sexual abuse, social isolation, and the use of power and control generally by one partner over another. Yet this issue is often unrecognised or hidden, which was confirmed in the research at the Women's Centre for Health Matters conducted in late 2015.
Very good.
Quite subtly placed. WCHM's research explored this issue in the ACT to identify gaps in local knowledge and understanding and to find out what would help to give visibility to the issue of domestic and family violence amongst LGBTIQ communities in the ACT. I think it's actually got value far broader than the ACT personally. The research found that because there'd been such a widespread public focus on heterosexual couples and families, many of the local respondents were less likely to identify domestic and family violence in their own relationships where it did occur. Some of the reasons for this included that they were not aware that domestic violence was an issue relevant to their community, that they did not recognise what was happening to them was domestic or family violence, and that LGBTIQ friends and others in their social networks often did not recognise the abusive relationship dynamics as intimate partner violence or family violence. Possibly the strongest finding in considering what would be useful and what would make a difference was centred on ensuring awareness and understanding that this issue existed within the LGBTIQ community. A recommendation from the report was for the development of LGBTIQ culturally appropriate resources and materials that would raise awareness within the ACT community about domestic violence, what it looks like and what people can do or where they can go in terms of seeking support. WCHM then worked with members of the local LGBTIQ community to explore what would work best and what the concepts and wording for awareness raising in the community should be. The majority of the community members consulted said they needed to see their relationships in a positive light, even if such a difficult and negative topic was involved. There was a strong preference in the consultations that the images and messages be used in a series of posters, as you can see around us, to be placed in public spaces in the community, supported by avant-gardes in local cafes, where it was likely to be seen and easy to pick up, and also supported by being connected to other information. The overall campaign comprises 5 images on posters, each of which shows a different local, as we're seeing, real and recognisable couple, and uses the slogan, "Same love, same rules." As you can see, they've come up extremely well. It's great to just, have them, I guess, surrounding us here today, all around. And I think, as we start to see those get out there into the community, it'll be even more important, I guess, and recognisable, and hopefully it will become something that people are increasingly familiar with. The images will be available to share online, and the avant-gardes will be distributed in the next week. The campaign encourages the LGBTIQ community to find out more about domestic and family violence by directing them to more information on a website, and you'll notice that that's along the bottom of all of the posters, and no doubt it's going to be on the cards as well. As you can see from looking around the room, the result is a positive campaign that shows local, loving and diverse couples in the ACT, but that reminds the LGBTIQ community that domestic and family violence can happen in their relationships, and that there are services that can help. On behalf of the Human Rights Commission, I'm pleased to now formally launch the campaign. Please join me in congratulating the Women's Centre for Health Matters for their work on furthering awareness about this important issue. Just before I ask Veronica to come up and say a few words, I'm going to ask Helen if she'd like to say a few words as the Human Rights Commissioner for the ACT.
Thanks, Marcia. I'd too like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Ngunnawal people. Indigenous Australians have been here for over 40,000 years, evidence of 20,000 years in Birregui. I don't know if you know, in the UN community, Australia is always asked to go first because we're the oldest living culture. It's fantastic to do this work with Marcia. We've had a proud relationship with Women's Centre for Health Matters. We ACT Women Prisons Group with the audit we did of the AMC back in 2014. Hunting Ground Film last year, looking at sexual assault at universities. Out of Reach report back in 2010 and various AGMs. So it's great to be able to offer this space, and that it's very relevant, this very positive campaign to make sure that mainstream services are inclusive and not exclusive of the LGBTIQ community. So John Hinchey, Victims of Crime Commissioner, can offer services for victims of crime. He has a new financial assistance scheme as of 1 July last year. It's not necessary to have a conviction or a police record of violence. You can access that scheme. Jodie, you know, is public advocate. Karen is the Discrimination, Health, Disability and Community Services Commission. You may see on the table, everyone can play guidelines for best practice for transgender and intersex participants. It was launched last month, so please feel free to take copies. We have done work with the community. We worked asking the attorney to squash historical convictions for male homosexuality. We wrote in 2014 and took 2 years to implement. Similarly, we wrote about the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Act back in 2010. It went to the Law Reform Advisory Council for 2 years, and then the legislation was through. It was the first in Australia. It was only brought into South Australia in December last year. Victoria, the bill was defeated, unfortunately, but will come back, and there's movements in Queensland and Tasmania. We have done surveys on discrimination, World AIDS Day, with the AIDS Council, and really this is the power of the Women's Centre for Health Matters, looking at empirical local research and finding out national trends and how they translate in the ACT, and actually making a difference and making action. And congratulations on a fantastic resource and a fantastic place.
Unaccustomed as she is to speaking, Veronica is going to say something on behalf, I think, of the people involved in the campaign, but others are equally welcome to come up and talk if they want to.
Yes, unaccustomed to public speaking as I am, and with 2 minutes' notice. But I guess firstly I want to thank the Women's Centre for Health Matters for doing this project. It's a really important project, and you did a great job on all the consultations and running the focus groups. One of the things that hasn't been said yet, which I think is important to kind of mention, is the fact that one of the conclusions that we came to was that we can have a set of resources for the LGB community, but they won't necessarily apply to the TIQ community.
You just stole my last.
Sorry. It was way back. So there remains some work to be done. These resources are fantastic. I'm personally really excited to have been part of them. I first became involved because I was on the council, and the council was assisting the Women's Centre for Health Matters in their consultations. But I've had a long-term interest in, speaking out against domestic and family violence for many years, as many of you probably know, having been the manager for the ACT Office for Women for 5 years, and managed the Canberra Rape Crisis Centre for 5 years before that. So these issues are very dear to my heart. And I also wanted to say that, Krishna, my lovely partner, who, was ACT Senior Woman of the Year last year, and winner of the Spring Out Pride Award, it does mean that Krishna and I are often in a position where people in the community come to us when there is violence going on in their relationships. So being able to sort of have some resources, being able to refer to the research is a fantastic thing for us on a personal level as well. To be able to reassure people that, the services will and can help. I think one of the challenges, particularly in same-sex domestic violence, is, well, who's the perpetrator? It's not as simple. I think in heterosexual relationships, we tend to go to the default. We know that, in the vast majority of cases, the females are the victims and the males are the perpetrators. But of course, that's not the case when we're looking at same-sex domestic violence. It's one of the challenges that I think, we have to work with. And I think one of the other reasons why this hasn't been a particularly well, for want of a better word, publicised issue to date is that the LGBTI community, has its own struggles. We struggle for validity and for legitimacy in our own relationships. We still don't have equal marriage. So kind of bursting the bubble and admitting that this stuff goes on in our relationships is a big risk for us, because we're still struggling, you know, for that legitimacy. So this kind of, you know, it means that the straight world looks in and goes, oh God, you know, geez, they're being violent to each other. How can we support their call for equal marriage? So, you know, I think it's a very brave thing to do as well. And yeah, I want to thank all the models who, you know, participated because they felt that this issue was really important. And yes, we tried as much as possible to get a bit of diversity, you know, in age, gender and cultural diversity. So I think that's all from me, but yeah, thanks very much, Marcy, a great job, and thanks very much for launching the posters.
And I think Joel and Alan both said, you know, we showed them what's and all, you know, their double chin, I think. So it was a real, it was great having them here because it actually does show, we used real couples that were, and we want to thank them for volunteering to stand up and actually show their images and support the campaign. So that's all the speeches at the end. Please join us for a light morning tea there. And please feel free to take some of the posters back to your organisations, display them. We'll also be sharing the images on Facebook and we'll send them out to you all too if you'd like to help us by sharing this campaign. That would be great. I think Karen's going to tweet. And thank you all for attending today. Please take some time to talk to the models, maybe get their signature. And we look forward to working again in this space around the bits that we haven't done yet. So thank you again to the Human Rights Commission for allowing us to use their room. And thank you everyone else for attending.